Well, hello and good morning. Welcome to Elevenses. I'm Kevin Williams of Survival Skills Rider Training, and this is my twice weekly webcast. And today, as usual, it's live. It's show number 360. It's Wednesday, the 22nd of May, and it is a pretty miserable looking day outside here in London at the moment. Paul's looked in. Good morning, Paul. Nice to see you. Well, we have a fairly packed show again today. Sadly, the first story is that the riders died in a Cornish village. It just happened to be the one where I was delivering my presentation on Saturday, which is rather sad to say. Shane Byrne is suing the organisers of the race event over his 2018 career-ending crash. And a final journey taken by hearse has seen a teen-aged rider who died on the M25 in recent crash take 2 laps of Brands Hatch. Guardian story tells us that insurance costs are being inflated by claims management companies, and we'll have a quick look at that because I think it is also relevant to motorcycles, though this story was about car insurance. The Woolwich ferry, the operating hours have been extended, and you may be wondering why I'm featuring that story. Well, I'll tell you later. Liberia has recommended that riders who use shared helmets for taxi bike services sanitize their helmets, and that's suggesting both riders and the end users actually do this. We'll ask if Singapore's two-wheeler road pricing unit is unfit for purpose. When you see the photograph of the thing bolted to the bike, you'll see what I mean. Meanwhile, if it's got wheels, somebody will race it, and we'll have a quick look at the e-scooter cup from Dubai. Yamaha, the World Superbike team, have confirmed there is an imminent R9 arriving with them. No big surprise there. And then finally, oh, actually, I've forgotten the story. There's a quick look at a flat 8 engine that may or may not appear in a sort of super tourer thing. And then finally, today's in-depth feature, I'll be explaining why it is that we can't simply trust we'll be able to steer a motorcycle when we jump on it. And Nigel's looked in. Good to see you, Nigel. Yeah, you made it live. Unfortunately, looked in on the show that got cancelled due to my foul up Wednesday last. So you settle yourselves down for the next 30 minutes or so while I run through today's busy show. Right, anyway, let's start with the first thing first. The first thing I just want to give you is there's actually a free offer, a free download to go for, and here's the link to it. This is to my advanced riding in 500 words. It's not even a mini ebook, it's too small for a mini ebook, it's a sort of couple of sheets, but there you go, 500 words, and I explain what advanced riding is all about. The idea is to just give you some bullet points really for you to go away and think about, and if you don't understand a particular term, I'm not explaining it in 500 words, so I think that should be pretty obvious, but basically it should provoke you, I hope, to go and ask some questions. And of course, don't forget you can ask me those questions at any time you like. Now stay tuned too for another Trust the Trainer fix at the end of the show. Now this is thanks to some rather surprising, I have to say, comments that ended up on a post. Now I put this up 10 days or so ago. It was concerning an American rider who crashed on a bend and basically dislocated her neck. She was very, very lucky not to be killed. She basically, they called it an internal decapitation. But the problem was that she ended up in the corner and she couldn't get the bike steered around the bend. So, I say it's obvious that counter steering is a technique that needs to be covered, and it needs to be covered time and time again. So I'll come back to the how next week. But this week, what I want to explain is just why every rider really does need to understand countersteering and be able to make conscious countersteering inputs when riding. That'll be in about 30 minutes or so. Kevin's looked in as well, so good morning to Kevin. Now, don't forget, if you have any comments, any questions on anything during the show, drop me a line. I will try to answer you during the show if I possibly can. And if I can't get back to you in the show, I will come back to you after it's over. So, right, okay, let's carry on with the weather. Now, the bad news is our stream of rather nice weather has apparently come to an end. It was a lovely day on Monday, and I had some nice weather down in the southwest too. So things have gone downhill again, and the Met Office has actually issued a yellow warning for large areas of England and Wales today, as an area of heavy and persistent rain crosses the south of the UK, and it's likely to cause some flooding and disruption to travel. And certainly it rained most of yesterday, and it's still raining at the moment. Now, the rain will clear slowly from eastern parts of England through the day, but overnight the area of rain will move into northern England and North Wales, where it's likely to become heavy and persistent, particularly on north-facing hills, before easing during Thursday morning. Further south, Thursday should be a drier day with some brighter spells. Friday looks mostly dry but cloudy, light showers in Scotland and central England. Saturday will start dry and bright for most, but clouds and patchy rain will move in from the west during the afternoon. So a bit of a mixed bag, really, depending on where you are. Not fantastic weather. Okay, so on with the news for Micahs. Now, the first story, sad one. A motorcyclist has died in the Cornish village of Laydock after a collision with a car. Now, the crash happened just before noon on Monday, the 20th of May, and the 57-year-old male rider suffered severe, fatal injuries, sadly. Police are, of course, appealing for any witnesses. Now, the connection here is that Laydock is actually where I was delivering my presentation to Cornwall IAM last Tuesday. So it's a sad reminder that collisions can happen anywhere, and it's almost always the rider who comes off worst. My condolences to friends and family there. Okay, second story of the day then concerns another crash, but this one involved Shane Byrne. Now, the 6 times British Superbike champion is suing 3 motorcycle riding organisations at the High Court in London after he sustained what were described as catastrophic injuries in a crash which forced him into retirement. Now, the crash happened at Palmer Corner, that's turn 3, of the 3-mile-long Sanitising circuit, and the crash happened during a test session at the Norfolk track in May 2018. The 47-year-old former racer claims that the barrier in place was insufficient and was responsible for his injuries, which included several fractures and internal injuries. His barrister, Kyril Waite, said that after coming off the track at around 60 miles per hour, 97 kph for those who are using the metric system, the bike went across a grass runoff area for about 60 metres, and both the vehicle and Mr. Byrne hit a safety barrier at between 15 and 25 miles per hour. Now, lawyers for the 3 sporting bodies, that's Motorsport Vision Racing, they run the championship, Motorsport Vision, who own the track, and the Motorcycle Circuit Racing Control Board, who are the sports governing body, they deny the allegations, and they told the court that Mr. Byrne was to blame for the accident and they were not at fault as a result. Now, the barrier in question is known as a Type D Additional Protective Device, or APD, and basically it consists of tyres bolted together, and it's said to be the minimum level of protection. Now, Mr. Waite told the court that what should have been in place was a Type A device, which is basically the air barrier, the air fence, which was, he says, the appropriate form of protection, and it should have been in place on that corner as it was elsewhere on the track. And he says that Mr. Byrne's case is that had Type A APD been fitted in front of the barrier, Mr. Byrne would not have suffered the catastrophic injuries he did. The cause of his injuries was him striking a Type D hard-surfaced conveyor-belted tyre barrier. Mr. Waite added there was no basis for the allegation that Mr. Byrne rode incompetently, and that it was quite inherently implausible that he rode off the track, instead claiming there was a loss of traction with the tarmac. Now, the trial is expected to conclude today, Wednesday 22nd of May, and judgment will be at a later date. So it'll be interesting to see how that one pans out. Okay, now sadly another news story. A motorcycle hearse has taken Andrina Everett. She was the 19-year-old motorcyclist killed in the incident on the M25 last month, that you may recall, on 2 laps of Brands Hatch. Now, she died after being involved in a collision with a Range Rover, which was being pursued by Kent police across the Dartford crossing. Now, although paramedics attended, along with Essex Police, Andrina from Medway died at the scene of the crash at junction 30. The driver and the passenger, both aged 18, from Essex, were arrested at the scene by Essex Police on suspicion of causing death by dangerous driving. And so a convoy of motorcycles, along with family and friends, arrived at the track yesterday, Tuesday 21st of May, before heading to Thames View Crematorium in Gravesend. Now, a story in the Guardian 10 days ago investigated how minor prangs are being inflated and leading to huge repair bills, or even cars being written off. And of course, those people involved in those claims often have their insurance premiums raised after making a claim. Now, the Guardian says that car insurance premiums have doubled for many in the last 2 years, and bike cover, as I'm sure you know, has also gone through the roof. I'm now paying around 8 times more than I was a decade ago, and only third-party cover too. I can't actually get third-party fire and theft, let alone comprehensive cover, so inferior cover and much more expensive. Now, Guardian Money points the finger at what they call the apparently bizarre and wasteful way that car insurers play out on their claims. Now, part of the blame, according to the article, lies with accident claims management companies. These are the people who get in touch with you after you report a crash to the insurance company, and they often offer to sort of smooth the path of your repair or payout. Now, the Guardian report says that these companies are routinely charging £5,000 to cover the costs of short-term replacement hire cars, and the repairs that should have cost hundreds of pounds to fix are actually billed in thousands to the insurance company. And what they're saying is that the insurance company, the industry itself, has actually lost control of these claims. So where do they get this data? Well, one source was an employee at an approved accident centre who claimed that minor bumper repairs are often inflated by adding unnecessary painting and other unneeded work because the work is being paid for by an insurer. To give you sort of an idea of how this might work, an owner reported that after a minor car park collision left their Skoda with a cracked bumper, the other driver's insurer paid out £7,000. Another report, a repair of a car which was so little damaged it was perfectly drivable and could have been fixed in a couple of days for a few £100s by a local garage. The owner was persuaded to go with the claims company, and it took 35 days, so he had no access to his vehicle, and that claims company offered him a hire car. It was a massive £128 a day, so the rental charge alone added £4,500 to the bill that the other driver had to pay out. Now, other vehicles are being written off even when insurance assessors apparently haven't inspected the vehicle. And though the story only mentioned cars, I can't help but think that the same applies to my motorcycles insurance, and I actually think that my brother fell foul of such a sort of an unnecessary write-off. He was on his nearly new BMW R1250S, and he was involved in a collision with a delivery van on a narrow lane. Now, he was going slowly. He'd actually stopped at the moment of impact. The van didn't quite manage to come to a standstill, so it pushed the bike backwards a foot or two, and he lost his balance. The machine fell over. Results, some cosmetic damage, but the bad news was the crash bar managed to rip through the mounting points in the crankcase and basically leave some holes in the engine, so not great design. But he handed it over to a claims company and was duly told that he wasn't getting the bike back. Had it been me, I would probably have been tempted to take the bike to a decent motorcycle engineer because it could have been rebuilt with a new crankcase. The Association of British Insurers, of course, the ABI, claim different. They say that bills have only risen by 8% over the last year, but financial data suggests that the premiums actually rose 33% over the same time period. The ABI also claim costs have gone up because cars are more advanced than they once were, with much more sophisticated technology. This and the diagnostic tools and recalibrations required make repairs more expensive. Skills gaps and labour shortages are adding pressure to the repair network and delaying the amount of time it takes to fix a vehicle. Not very good English, is it? Delaying the amount of time? Extending the amount of time, I would have said, was correct, but anyway, hey ho. The ABI also dispute the rise in premiums and say that compared with the real costs, which have risen 23% in the same period, they've kept premiums down. But the trouble is, of course, that even when a no-fault claim goes down on our insurance and somebody else pays for it, it results in a premium increase, and that's exactly what happened after my camper was hit, parked in the street with me nowhere near it. Right, okay, so I'll be interested in your experiences. Have you found your insurance going up? Have you had to make a claim? Did you use a claims company? What was the outcome? Has your premium been hit by a claim? Let me know, and everybody else can find out too. Right, okay, so on with the next story though. You might think this is of no interest to anybody outside London, but these are two of the Woolwich ferries. I was interested the other day to see that TfL, Transport for London, has extended the Woolwich ferries operating hours. There are once again 2 boats operating every day of the week, every 15 minutes, and the frequency of weekend operations has also been doubled. The good news is that the ferry, which has actually been operating since the 14th century, I don't think these boats are quite that old though, fortunately, it's actually free. So why might you be interested in the Woolwich ferry if you're not in London? Well, simply put, it's a cool way to cross the Thames. And it's a great alternative, I think, and a chance to take a bit of a break when heading north-south, and an alternative to the M25 or the Blackwall Tunnel. So this is where the Woolwich ferry actually is. It's basically on either end of the north and south circular roads, and obviously enough at Woolwich. So it provides fairly quick access to the M11, A12 and A13 north of the river, and to the A2 and the A20 south of the river. And I often used to use it when heading back from a long courier run, back when I lived in Kent. It's usually possible to sneak to the front of the queue on the bike, so there's no long delay. They just squeeze you in a corner, so you're not taking parking spaces away from cars. And you get a few minutes off the bike to rest your bum while the ferries are mid-river or unloading, and then another few minutes to admire London from the centre of the Thames whilst you're on your way. So if you're ever down that way, have a think about it. I think you'd be pleasantly surprised at the crossing. Right, okay. Anything else to say? Don't forget, if you are enjoying the show, set yourself a reminder. It goes out Wednesdays and Sundays at 11 a.m. It's usually live, occasionally recorded, very rarely, as I did the other week, I miss a show. So do make a note in your diary and come back and see me again. Now, many countries around the world are clamping down on helmet use, given the well-proven benefits of wearing one when you crash. But in countries where people travel by taxi bike a lot, the passenger will frequently have to rely on a helmet provided by the taxi bike owner. And this is why the Director General of the National Public Health Institute of Liberia, one Jane A. Macaulay, has raised concern that compulsory helmet wearing by passengers riding commercial motorcycles is posing a serious health risk. The NPHIL say that the transmission of pathogenic bacteria or fungi between passengers could potentially lead to infections. She says this needs urgent attention to mitigate the potential public health risk of spreading infectious diseases amongst passengers who may travel on these taxi bikes. So the NPHIL strongly recommends that all motorcyclists and passengers adhere to effective hygiene practices, and they recommend that motorcyclists clean their helmets regularly between use by different passengers, daily, weekly and monthly, by using disinfectant spray. And that they also avoid placing gloves inside helmets, and that they say passengers are recommended to carry their own sanitizer, and if they have to borrow a helmet, they should cover their heads before wearing a shared helmet, and also wear a face mask. But they say ultimately the best solution is to carry your own helmet. So public health risks on shared helmets. Ever borrowed a helmet from anybody? Ever rented a bike and had a helmet supplied? I have to admit I did in the Cook Islands when I was out there a few years ago. Okay, so what else have we got for you? Well, I mentioned the road charging unit. Oh, that's not the right picture. There it is. It's jumped 2 forwards. This is the what's called the onboard processing unit, and it's designed to hold a payment card with which motorcyclists pay for electronic road pricing or parking charges in Singapore. Now, basically, it's secured to the vehicle so that the authorities, to quote the Minister for Transport, Chi Hong Tat, so that the authorities know where the vehicle is, and so there is no dispute about whether the device is functioning or not. You know, my question on this is this actually something that is fit for purpose to be bolted to the front of a motorcycle? I mean, the astonishing thing is, given Singapore is so high tech, this looks like it was designed in the sort of 60s or the 70s. Cars actually have a similar device which has to be bolted to the side of the door down in the footwell. Now, as far as I'm aware, all you need for road pricing is actually a smart transponder and a smart card reader. The transponder detects when the vehicle passes a charging point or crosses into a different zone with a different charge rate, or out of a zone, of course, and then the smart card is deducted the amount due. So I'm not sure why it has to be so big, nor am I actually entirely sure why there is need for the authorities to actually track the vehicle. All you need to do is, as I say, record when it crosses the boundary points. So why not use a smartphone app? Well, the official line is smartphones can't provide the same level of data and systems securities as this huge onboard unit. But frankly, if this is an example of the sort of device that might end up fitted to a motorcycle in the UK, if the government ever decides to implement road pricing, I'm sure there'll be howls of protest. I mean, it's not just the looks, but which are bad enough, but do you really want something like this bolted in front of you when you come off the bike? So again, what do you think? Give me your opinion on this. Right, if it has got 2 wheels, people will race it. Not surprisingly, it's not taken long for an official event to showcase the performance of electric step scooters. Now, I can't find a video of the event, just a couple of very short teasers, but the Dubai Electric Scooter Cup, described as the preeminent showcase for e-scooter racing and micro-mobility potential, took place in December last year at the culmination of their Year of Sustainability in the UAE. Now, the event was said to unite the world's best riders to race on the fastest electric scooters, and it took place around the streets of Dubai. The scooter itself is the RS0. It appears to be a purpose-designed, state-of-the-art scooter. It weighs around 50 or 60 kilos. It's made of carbon fibre and it's capable of reaching speeds of over 140 kilometres per hour. That's nudging 90 miles per hour. And not surprisingly, the riders themselves wear kit borrowed from motorcycle racing. Now, the teaser video certainly makes it look a lot more exciting than the autonomous car racing that I mentioned a couple of shows ago. If you want to, you can check out the official website to find out a bit more. Here it is. Go take a look there, and there is also a gallery of still photos to be found here. Let's get that one up. There we go. Those are the links. Kevin says he's off to walk the dog. Good luck with that. Stay dry, Kevin. Right, okay, so that was e-scooter racing. That's not the right picture either. Hang on a minute. No, I've gone completely skew here, so let's just put that on hold for a moment. Now, with the near demise of the 600cc four-cylinder motorcycle class, the Supersport rules, which formerly allowed four-cylinder 600s to compete with 750cc twins, they've had to have a big shake-up because basically the competition now running sort of 5-6-year-old bikes in some cases. And bikes like the 765 Triumph Street Triple, Ducati's 955 Panigale V2, MV Agusta's F3800RR, and the Chinese QJ Motor SRK 800RR are now all able to compete. And Yamaha has been hotly tipped to be readying an R9 to replace their AGR6, which is no longer available in Europe and the UK as a street bike. Now, in the last show, I mentioned that KTM are ready to run a prototype twin in this season's events, and Yamaha's World Superbike team boss has now been reported as saying that Yamaha are set to introduce that hotly rumoured R9 to replace the R6 in the race series, and it's presumably to be based around the current three-cylinder MT09 design. So there are plenty of other bikes which are involved. The Aprilia RS 660 is another one. So it does make it an interesting time of change for this once very popular class of motorcycle, and it will be interesting to see how that pans out and whether, you know, win on Sunday, bite on Monday is actually going to apply to the Supersport class as it once did. So the 2025 season, I think, will be very, very interesting indeed, and it'll give us a glimpse into the future of road-going sports motorcycles and whether there is actually a future for them. Now, one motorcycle engine that you won't be finding on the track anytime soon is a Flat 8 from GWM, or Great Wall Motors, which might give you a clue as to the country of origin. Now, right now, there is no word as to whether GWM, who also manufacture cars, by the way, have any intention of actually releasing this motor in a real motorcycle. There's no word on displacement, although it's speculated to be around 1600 cc's. There's no word on horsepower either, although my guess is that the motor will probably be tuned for torque because it does appear to have a shaft to drive. And on the YouTube videos, which I've just put a link up to, there's a screen that shows a sort of mock-up or render of the front of the motorcycle with a sort of an electric glide style fairing, so that suggests it's likely to be used as a tourer if it appears in anything at all. Now, last time the 8-cylinder motorcycle engine appeared was when Morbidelli showed off their V8 shortly before they collapsed financially. Right, okay, so there's a video for you to have a look at. Now, before I head off to today's final item, which is the in-depth piece, don't forget the Survival Skills, a range of paperbacks on better biking skills. So you can visit my publisher at the URL www.lulu.com/spotlight/survival skills to find out more, or you can pop over to my coffee shop and download some inexpensive ebook versions. And it is a cheap way of improving your riding. And here's an even cheaper way of improving your riding. I've just released the I'm not even calling it a mini ebook, a micro ebook, I guess. Advanced Riding in 500 Words. Now it's cheap, it's free, and no sign-ups, no catches. Simply download it from my coffee shop. Here is the URL to do that. Just coming up on screen now. There we go. And while you're there, why not have a look at some of the other free and inexpensive content? There is something pretty much for everyone over there. Let me know if you download this micro ebook and what you think of it. As I said earlier, it's not designed to tell you how to ride. What it is designed to do is point up any knowledge gaps. If there's a term in there that you don't understand, maybe it'd be a good idea to get some help on that one. And that brings me neatly to the final item today, the in-depth item. Now, as I mentioned in the intro, a week or so ago, I featured an article about a US rider who crashed in a curve, hit the guardrail, and was lucky to survive a complete neck dislocation. These are usually instantly fatal. Now, the crash actually stretched her neck and separated the vertebrae in her spine, but by some miracle, she actually survived the crash. Her spinal cord wasn't severed, even though she suffered bleeds from major arteries, and her recovery took months. Now, the reason I made that post was really to illustrate the frailty of the human body. But as an aside, I also said that the crash was an illustration of why everyone on two wheels must understand counter steering. Now, why? Well, as the woman herself explained, she took the new motorcycle out for a ride following her dad and said, quote, "There weren't any issues until I wanted to go left and the motorcycle wouldn't." So as well as illustrating just how easy it is to be seriously injured in a crash, I said that this story was, quote, "also a stark lesson into just why learning to counter steer is an absolutely vital life-saving lesson that all motorcyclists ought to have ingrained before they are let near the road." Now, somewhat to my surprise, I was immediately challenged on that, and one comment was this: I'm not convinced about learning to countersteer. I think that once one has learnt to ride a bicycle, countersteering is an inherent part of riding. One cannot ride without countersteering, whether one realizes it or not. It's not a conscious element to learn. Learn and understand that is what is happening, but to get around the corner, a rider is going to do it without having to learn it. And the rider followed that up a few minutes later by saying, "You must have been counter steering when you rode away before you were taught it." And he wasn't the only one. Another comment said, "I'd been riding push bikes for more years than I care to remember before I learnt to ride a motorbike and must have done it then." Now, I have to say I was a little bit gobsmacked by those responses. This isn't the only crash of this sort. Now, not too many years ago, I saw a video of a UK woman. She was out with another rider. She was on L plates, if I remember correctly, and the trailing video showed her completely failing to negotiate a very gentle left-hand bend at very modest speed as a car came the other way. You can guess the rest. She ran wide and into the car. So in other words, just like this American woman who hit the guardrail, this novice rider also clearly didn't know how to steer well enough to avoid a crash. She only knew enough about steering to get herself into trouble, and that's the point I want to make here. So what's this? What about this can't ride without counter steering idea? Well, it's absolutely right. You cannot ride a motorcycle without counter steering, but the point I've just made is that you can be counter steering badly without realizing what you're doing and not know how to deal with an emergency. First of all, that we have no innate instinctive human ability that lets us steer a two-wheeler. And second, I would say most youngsters and even many older riders have never ridden a bicycle these days, so they've got no experience to draw upon. And the third thing is that picking up this counterintuitive turn the bars left to go right sort of way of steering a motorcycle is not something that everybody manages, nor is the push harder to turn tighter. input that we need to sort of swerve and adapt to a sort of cornering error. So letting a novice loose on two wheels and leaving them to figure out steering for themselves, in my opinion, means they're an accident waiting to happen. And I still remember one CBT trainee and watching him try to physically steer the bike into a turn. All we were asking him to do was ride around an oblong block of cones, nothing complicated. Fortunately for him, our off-road area was safe. He was right at the beginning of his CBT, and after he'd ridden straight on into a chain link fence instead of making the turn that he was supposed to have made, I most definitely took him aside and taught him counter steering before we did anything else. So the biggest part of this error that given time we'll learn idea is that we may well cope with steering on gentle bends at relatively low speeds. We may even be able to give the illusion that we know what we're doing on more complex corners, right up to the point where things go wrong. Now, another objection was that you can't teach counter steering without going riding, and that is absolute nonsense. It's absolutely possible to teach the theory of counter steering before anyone gets near a motorcycle. I taught it to myself, admittedly, after reading about counter steering in a magazine. It was some years after I'd started riding, so clearly, yes, I was already counter steering, but I think I would have gone much more safely around those corners had somebody told me about counter steering before I actually ventured out on a motorcycle. So, coming back to CBT, we could very easily fit the push left, go left, push right, go right theory in the classroom on CBT before the rider actually gets on the bike. And as I've demonstrated many times, I can show a rider how it works simply by pushing the bars away from me with just one fingertip. That's all it needs to counter steer at low speed. I don't have to hold the other end of the bar. I don't recommend that you try this unless you are competent, but you just need very light pressure on the handlebars and you can feel what's happening very easily. So we can set up simple exercises on CBT. We get them to do a slalom many times in Mod 1, for example. It's easy enough to teach that with counter steering. Okay, and of course I have written about counter steering many times before. Here is a post which I or cut out from a post which I wrote. You can see the logos there: push left to go left, push right to go right. That was May the 15th, 2021. So it's a topic I've covered many times, not just in this post from 3 years ago almost to the date. So why do people seem to find it so difficult to accept that counter steering can be taught? I don't know. Why do so many people seem to believe that we don't need to learn one of the two crucial collision avoidance techniques? We're quite happy to learn emergency stops, and we don't send riders out there and say, oh, you'll just pick it up as you go along. So why do we do it with counter steering? I have absolutely no idea. It's down to the long history of official reluctance to make steering part of the basic training syllabus in the UK. I won't go into why there's been so much resistance on teaching it today, but the fact is we all learn things a damn sight faster if we're taught to do something properly rather than simply left to figure it out by trial and error. And frankly, the word error should give us a good clue why trial and error is not a good way to learn. Experience has a way of being a very tough teacher, as those two crash stories sadly show us. So learn the fundamentals. That can be taught in theory, it can be taught off-road, it can even be taught on-road if you're careful, and then people can practice once they have the basic techniques in hands to gain experience with it. So to sum up, the ability to steer a motorcycle accurately relies on the skill of counter steering. It should not be simply left to luck and time on the road as those 2 incidents I mentioned show. And you, as I say, you can certainly learn the basics online too. So tune in this time next week for my very own course 101 on counter steering. So pop the date in the diary. Next Wednesday. I'm not sure what the date is. It's June, isn't it? Because we're almost at the end of May already. Right, that is it for today's in-depth piece. Remember, if you do want any help with any riding issues, drop me a line. I can offer everything from written advice for free, a quick informal online chat, right up to a sort of fully personalized and structured online coaching session. And of course, if you're anywhere near where I operate in the Southeast, I can and will offer you uniquely designed on-the-road training. And I would say that it's unlikely to be anything that you've experienced elsewhere. A quick reminder too, check out the videos on YouTube, my 60-second safety, 60-second science series. They all offer you really useful information, but in a quick to watch, easy to digest format. And I do put a couple of new ones up most weeks. Right, Paul has just said, whether counter steering is intuitive or not, it's beneficial to have the principle explained and to develop an understanding. Absolutely, Paul, couldn't agree more. All right, if you have missed any of my articles, do remember that what you can do is have them delivered to you in a handy weekly newsletter. It goes out every Sunday morning, usually, by subscribing to my Substack newsletter. Head to substack.com and simply search for Survival Skills over there, or you can use the QR code. That'll take you right there. Right, it's also time to wrap up for today. So if you've enjoyed the show, just please do the usual things. Subscribe to the channel, like and share the show. It only takes you a second of your time. And don't forget to tell people about Elevenses. Share the link to your riding buddies too, and that helps me grow the channel. That's it. I am off. So thanks to everybody who's looked in, either live or on catch-up. If you're out there on the bike today, enjoy your riding and stay shiny side up. And that way I will see you next show.